Hi, this is Mike Shackelford, also known as the Wizard of Odds, and I'm joined today by my friend Angela Wyman.
Hi.
And today we are going to talk about slot machines, in particular the most frequently asked questions about slot machines. So do you have some questions ready for me, Angela?
I do, but before we even get into it, I have the question everyone's going to ask us. What do flamingos have to do with slot machines?
Absolutely nothing.
Exactly, absolutely nothing. So.
I have so few collared shirts that I didn't have much to choose from.
So I had to borrow one so I matched, so that's why. So
I didn't notice that. Wow, that's great. What are the odds you would have a flamingo shirt?
Well, I did have to borrow it. But on that note, absolutely, I have some serious questions about slot machines for you.
But before you ask that, there's another off-topic question. Who are we joined by here?
We are joined by one of my munchkin cats. So this is Loki Woo, and you may remember her if you've watched some of our other videos. She likes to show up on our table when we're filming at my house. And yes, she's basically a dwarf cat. It's a naturally occurring genetic mutation where their limbs are disproportionately small. So they basically stay kittens their whole life, and she will probably be here most of the time. She's a very social animal. Thanks for joining us, kiddo.
Yes.
So grab your cat and grab a drink and join us for some of the frequently asked questions about slot machines.
Okay, so let's jump right in.
What
is your first question for me, Angela?
All right, here's a big question.
Okay.
How do slot machines work?
Okay, I could talk about this all day long. I'm sure you're not surprised, but I will try to give you the executive summary here. The way slot machines work is you have reels, of course, and there's one reel for every, shall we say, position in the slot machine. Slot machines started as basically simple 3-reel games, and today the most popular ones are the video 5-reel versions, although you can see practically anything today. But either way, there is going to be a reel stripping. And with the older slot machines, it's actual physical loop and a reel. And the game will spin that reel and stop it somewhere randomly. And with the video slot machines, it's a video representation of a great big long reel strip that stops somewhere randomly. And how does it determine where to stop somewhere randomly? It's with random numbers. So for example, with a video slot machine, let's say that the reel strip has 100 positions. The game will pick a random number from, say, 1 to 100, and let's say that number is 23. It will simply stop on the 23rd position on that reel strip and show the symbol there and the symbol above it and the symbol below it. So ultimately what happens to you is determined by random numbers, one for each reel.
Okay. Now, that being said, one of the things I've heard about slot machines, or that you hear people say, and they do it in everything from forums to billboards, is that certain places set their machines looser. So if they're working that way, how would it be possible for them to actually set their machines tighter or looser? Is that a myth, or is that something they can actually do?
I will address that as one of our questions down in the video. Let's we're getting ahead of ourselves.
I have a way of doing that.
Okay, but to expand on how slot machines work a little bit, with the 3-reel slot machines, like for example with the Megabucks, you have 3 physical reels, and if all 3 stop on the Megabucks symbol, then you win this jackpot of like $10 million. The way they prevent that from getting hit all the time, if every reel had the same if every stop on every reel had the same chance, you would be hitting that once in every 22 to the 3rd power times, which would be too frequently to win a $10 million jackpot. So with the 3-reel one-line games, the positions are weighted, and the reels will stop on some positions more often than others. And in particular with Megabucks, the weighting for the Megabucks symbol itself is really low, whereas say the blanks above and below it will be by law no more than 6 times higher. So they probably will be exactly 6 times as high. So that's why you often you feel like you're one off from the big jackpot symbol.
Yes.
Yes. And we will talk more about that.
Okay.
But that is the executive summary of how slot machines work. It's just random numbers. And a lot of people incorrectly think that the game will pick shall we say, your monetary win and then just show you anything that matches that win. That is not how it works. It's all random numbers, and then that determines where the reels stop, and then that determines what you win.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
So that's the short version.
I like it. Makes sense even for a non-slot player like myself.
Okay.
Okay, so I think I have a decent handle on the basic way that the slot machines work. So I'm going to bring you back to what I was asking earlier, because I'm just so curious. Is there like something in the back room, a magical switch, that while I'm playing, the casino can go, no, and they toggle it on, and suddenly that machine gets tighter? You hear these crazy anecdotal stories about things like that. Is that real?
Yes, that is definitely I would say, a myth in the slot machine community. The short answer to your question is no. The long answer is that in theory it is possible.
Really?
And let me expand on that a little bit. So the way I would say 99% of slot machines work is to change the return percentage of them. A slot technician would have to open up the machine and either put in a different microchip called an EEPROM chip in the machine, or go through a whole menu system and just select a different return percentage. But it involves a human being to actually spend some time with that machine and adjust it. And furthermore, here in Nevada, not only would you have to do that, but every casino has to report to the gaming control board what every single machine is set to in terms of a return percentage. And the gaming control board sometimes does surprise inspections and says, show us machine this, and this, to make sure that they match the return percentages that the casino is reporting. So if they wanted to change that, they would also have to probably fax in a form to the gaming control board announcing this change. So it is quite a bit of fuss to change the return percentage of a machine. However, there is new technology which I believe has been field trialed at the Treasure Island, and I think one of the casinos in Southern California does this, is that no longer do they have to actually open up the machine and fuss around with it. They can do it remotely from anywhere, probably the slot director's office. And could he look down on the casino floor and say, oh, I don't like that redhead playing this machine, I'm going to tighten it on her? No, there is a law against that the law in Nevada, and I don't know it exactly, but it's something like the machine has to have not been played for, say, 60 minutes. So if you're actually actively there playing it, they legally can't mess around with it. And I believe that California has a similar law. It would seem only fair that any place would do that. So, but that law aside, in theory, with this new technology called I think it's called server-side gaming, something like that. Yeah, they can do it remotely.
So the guy doesn't like me, and he sees me, and I'm playing. And because of this law, he can't tighten the machine on me. But what if he saw me going up there originally and I put my player's card in? Because I've heard that whether or not your player's card is inserted can affect whether the machine is loose or tight. Is that also a myth then?
That's another question.
You guys ask good questions then.
Yes.
I haven't seen the list either. So.
Yes, you are hitting all the big ones. Let me finish up by saying that, I have never been asked that before, but in theory, let's say you walk through the door and the slot director didn't like the hat you were wearing because he doesn't like ugly polka dotted hats.
I don't wear ugly hats.
I guess he could follow you through the casino and see, oh, she wants to play this game, and no one has played it for at least an hour. I'm going to real quickly change it. I don't know if there's like a waiting period for the change to take effect or not.
So that's interesting.
But the thing with all these casino myths, to be honest with you, is the casinos are not sitting there scheming about how to win every additional penny. They know they have the mathematical advantage, and they really just kind of relax and let the players play, and they will make their money. They don't need to overthink it, and most of them don't. It's really a pretty simple business.
Unless it comes to paid parking. But that's another topic.
Yes. Let's save that for our biggest grievances and rip-offs video.
Darn straight.
Which I do have planned, by the way. Okay, so you did ask me about player cards, right?
I did.
Okay, so Another question I get a lot is, as you just asked it, Mike, does it matter if I put in a player card in terms of like the game results? Like, will the game be looser or tighter if I put in a player card? And the answer is absolutely not. The mechanism that determines what happens with the reels is completely independent of the mechanism that tracks your play with the player card. So, and to expand on that a little bit, you absolutely always should use a player card, because the casinos love slot players because they win so much money from them that they like to give some of it back to keep you coming back. And your expected losses playing slot machines is really quite high. So you will get roughly, I would say 1/3 to 40% of that back in comps if you put in your player card and you ask for those comps. So again, I can't understate this enough. I mean, overstate it, that the casinos love slot players. So if you're gonna throw away your money on them, at least get some of that back in terms of comps.
Fair enough. Get the free T-shirt. Get the free,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
A $1 slot player can probably get treated better than a $100 blackjack player.
There's truth to that. My mother doesn't even know how to play table games. She doesn't watch our videos, apparently. But she'll play the slots when she comes to visit. And a couple of the off-strip casinos, and she plays $5, $6 at a time. That's it. She's an accountant. And they will literally send her comp rooms. Well, she has to just pay the resort fee and the tax. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Whereas, I know people that will sit down at a table game $500 at a time, and they're waiting on those room comps. So
Absolutely.
you're absolutely right.
I've heard story after story like that.
Yep.
Yes, and it really does not take that much slot play to get free rooms.
Right.
Okay, well that's all I've got on that one.
All right, you've convinced me. I'm gonna go be a slot player, I'm gonna get my player's card, and I'm gonna put it in there and get my comps. Where are the loosest slots placed?
Okay, that is another myth.
Oh!
And as the myth goes, the casinos place their loosest slots by the front door and places that get a lot of foot traffic because they want to see players winning. And meanwhile, they place the tight slots kind of in the corners that don't get a lot of foot traffic. It's absolutely not true. And how do I know this, you might ask? Okay, back in 2001, 2002, I had par sheets that are the documents that show how slot machines are programmed. And to make a long story short, I could play certain games and tell what the return percentages were based by the patterns in the reels. And when I did this, I surveyed every single casino in Las Vegas. And one thing that I found was that any given casino was very consistent with their return percentage. For example, if a casino liked their nickel slots at 90%, they were 90% everywhere. It didn't matter if it was right by the front door or way in a back corner by the bathrooms. It just did not matter. They were consistent. And a casino that liked 85%, it was just 85% everywhere. So, and secondly, I know a lot of people in this business, a lot of slot directors, and I've asked them about this, and they would tell me off the record that, I liked a certain return percentage for a certain game, and that's just what I stick with.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess I'll just have to take my chances then.
So it doesn't matter. You can pick any machine that feels fun to you, or you just like the location. Don't sweat about, is it in a high traffic or low traffic area?
Okay, I'm gonna find one with flamingos on it next time. So I think I know the answer to this one based on what you've already let me know about slots, but I just want to make sure, and since this is one of those frequently asked things, do casinos tighten the slots when it's really busy? Do they loosen it when there's not much of a crowd, or do they do the opposite to draw people in?
Yes, that is another frequent myth among slot machine players.
Yeah.
And as the myth goes, the casinos tighten their slot machines when it's busy and they have a captive audience, and they loosen them when it's slow, trying to keep people around longer. Absolutely not true. As I mentioned before, the casinos have to go through a lot of fuss to change the return percentage in terms of actually going into the machine and reporting that change to the gaming control board. And as I said before, the slot directors and table game directors are not sitting there scheming all the time about how to get an extra dollar out of you. They can be a little bit lazy, and they know that the odds are in their favor, and they put the games out there and players will play them.
Exactly.
And they don't need to do a lot of trickery to get people to play them. And so, as I said before, if Casino X likes 90%, they just stick it, they just keep their games at 90% all the time. Every casino of a particular denomination, and it doesn't matter whether it's the 4th of July weekend or the weekend before Christmas, the return is the same.
So based on what you've already told me and how many of these things are just craziness, I think I know the answer, but I gotta ask anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a predetermined order of bet outcome? And what I mean by that, in case I'm not using the right phrasing, but so let's say I've been playing this machine all day and I'm protecting my machine, and finally I just have to get up and get a snack. And I put the chair off and I try to do everything I can to keep people off my machine. And I come back and somebody else has hit my jackpot. Is it really my jackpot? Did they steal my jackpot? Was that machine just bound to hit at that time? Or is that another giant myth?
It's another giant myth.
That works.
So as the myth goes, that the outcome of slot machines is like this predestined order.
Yes.
And let's say that there's a jackpot every million spins, that it's going to hit exactly when predestined. That is not true. As I mentioned before, the outcome of every single bet is determined by random numbers, and the past does not matter. Every single spin is independent, and you could have been playing that game all day and you are no closer to getting a jackpot than you were when you first sat down. So no, that other player did not steal your jackpot. They may have been a little bit rude if you leaned your chair against the machine, but no, if you had been playing, you wouldn't have hit that jackpot unless you made that bet at the exact same microsecond that player did, which is unlikely to happen. So yeah, your odds are the same every single spin, doesn't matter when the last jackpot hit. And furthermore, there have been many lawsuits about this. Is for example, a player will ask a slot attendant, please guard my game. I don't want anyone playing it. I'm a good customer. I have lost $5,000 on this. I just need to go to the bathroom. And the slot attendant might agree, but someone comes along and plays it anyway. And the player will just get furious. That player stole my jackpot.
Yeah.
Casino didn't guard it. I am suing the casino for the value of that jackpot. It's happened many times, and the player has lost every time correctly because that jackpot was not sitting there waiting for them. It was just a random thing that other player hit it.
Yes, absolutely. Emphasizing it's random numbers. It's
Yes.
that microsecond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as someone who worked in the casinos, although not as a slot attendant, don't ask your slot attendants to do things like that, people. They've got enough to do. They've got a hard enough job. Don't ask your blackjack dealer to do that. Don't ask your slot attendant to do it. Just an etiquette thing.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So now that you've explained to me that it doesn't matter the location I go to in the casino, whether it's the front of the casino or the back hidden corner, are there certain types of slots that do actually pay better? Like, does a certain type of machine pay better?
That is a very good question, and the answer is yes. And the simple answer is the simpler the game, the better the odds are likely to be.
Oh.
So, in particular, with your big fancy games like the Terminator and Sex and the City, with a huge screen and seats that move and stuff like that, those are the type machines. And those machines, they have a special business arrangement where the slot maker and the casino share the revenue from it, and they are traditionally set to a return of 88%. And that is not configurable by the casino. It is part of a deal with the slot maker that you must take the game as it stands. And they tend to be set tight. Now, you might argue that those games provide more entertainment value. And if you get more entertainment value out of that, by all means, go ahead. But just understand that it's going to cost you more than a simple game like buffaloes, or something like based on pandas, or something simple that just has a smaller screen that looks cheaper to build, and it doesn't look like they're having to pay royalties to anybody.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there'd have to be a lot of entertainment value for me to pay for like a vibrating game. So more than a few quarters anyway.
Well, they do have these special seats that I don't know if there's speakers in the seats or something, but you feel them vibrating like when something exciting happens.
Probably not enough vibration.
So yeah, there you go.
There you go.
My short answer is that if you want a better return, stick with the simple slots.
Okay, buffaloes.
There you go. Like, what is it called? 50 buffaloes, 100 buffaloes?
I don't quite get that game. We'll ask about that off camera so I don't insult any designers.
Okay.
So I have a really specific question about a machine that I saw at a tribal casino in Oklahoma. So you just playing this machine. It seemed like there was a bingo card in the corner. Now, why is that? Why would a tribal casino have a bingo card in the corner? Is this some kind of crazy lottery that they have in Oklahoma, or some kind of new rule? Like, why would the slot machines on a tribal casino have that?
Okay, that is called a Class 2 slot machine, as opposed to a Class 3 slot machine, which they have here in Nevada. So I'll try to keep this short, but the way it started in Oklahoma and other jurisdictions is that they were bingo only. Including a good example is San Diego. And then the tribes approached the state and said, okay, bingo is legal here, how about electronic bingo? And the state said, okay. And then they said, okay, now let's say the player is playing electronic bingo, and let's say that he wins $20. Can we display that $20 win in the form of a slot machine? Although it was really determined by a bingo game, and the state said yes. And then the tribes went to the slot makers and said, okay, please give me the typical games people like, but have the win determined having something to do with bingo. And the slot makers did it. So what is happening behind the scenes is really the player is playing bingo against other players, and there are so many thousands of these games that they will basically take people that made bets at the same time, pool them together, and whoever covered a certain bingo pattern first will say win some prize. And the games do have to be competitive in nature, like in bingo, to be compliant with the law. But it's the competitive nature of the game that only might return like 1% of the return, and the other, say, 89% will be consolation prizes. So it really is not very competitive in nature at all. And because slots are simply more, players like them more than bingo. So because the slot makers have done a very good job of, let's say that the rules say that if you complete this particular obscure pattern on your 35th ball, you will win this. And let's say that it is 4 times as bet. Then they will just show a slot machine win that just will pay what the 4 times your bet according to the bingo pattern. And you can sit there and play this and not even know that your outcome has anything to do with bingo balls, but it does. But in order to be completely not disrespectful of the law, they will show a bingo card somewhere in the corner, and if you go through the rule screens, like after they explain all the basic rules, they will show screen after screen after screen about like this pattern will pay this pattern will pay that. So yeah, ultimately it is a bingo game, but they've done a very good job of keeping that a secret. And I know this contradicts what I said earlier about how slot machines work, and when I said that before about random numbers and reel strips, that was referring to the typical Class 3 game that you would see in most jurisdictions that have full-blown gambling. And Class 2 is a horse of a different color.
Interesting, thank you.
You're welcome.
So now I have a really exciting question for you about taxes.
Who doesn't get excited about taxes?
Taxes, woo! IRS, say it again. So my question is, I was playing slots with a friend. They were playing. And they had a jackpot, and people came over and wanted to see identification. And they needed a social security number, and then they gave them a tax form. Why did they need their identification? When do you have to pay taxes on jackpots? Or do you even have to pay taxes on jackpots? Is it an income? Is it just you throw that form away and burn it and never think of it again? How does that work?
Okay, one could write a whole book on this topic. Okay, but here's the short version. The law says that if you hit a jackpot of $1,200 or more, then it will necessitate what's called a W-2G form, which is like a W-2 form, but the G is for gambling. And that is considered a gambling win that you are expected to pay taxes on. And it's also true that you can, in theory, offset any losses that year, gambling losses from that win, but you have to do that on the Schedule A, the itemization form. So if you don't itemize, which most people don't, effectively you can't withhold any gambling losses against that win. So for most people, you will have to pay taxes on that jackpot, and which I think is really unfair, because the way I think of it is the money that players played and lost in that machine was money that was already taxed.
Yes.
But no, basically, practically any time there's a financial transaction, Uncle Sam wants his share. So it is what it is. I think it's unfair that many people are in a situation, many machine players, that they hit a lot of jackpots, but by the end of the year, when the dust is settled, they're way in the hole,
right.
But yet they're still on the hook to pay taxes, whatever their tax bracket is, on these jackpots. And they can't offset unless they're itemizing, which most people don't. And furthermore, if you do itemize, you're expected to not just pick a number out of thin air that these are my losses, that you're expected to have these losses well documented. So, but again, whole books have been written about this, but yeah. And also, you might ask, what if I am not a US citizen?
That was my next question, yeah. What if I don't have a social security number?
Yeah.
I'm from Australia.
Yeah, then what they are going to do is they are going to withhold taxes from that jackpot. So if you hit, say, a $5,000 jackpot, they may only pay you $4,000, and they will give you the tax form and say, you can go through the IRS to try to get that withholding back. But the laws are different for every state. I think that there is kind of an expedited way to do this in Canada, but I don't know the relationship with every single country.
Wow.
But what I would take from that is, if you're not a US citizen, especially if you're not from Canada, I would really consider that any jackpots you hit, you're probably going to get a big chunk of that taken away in terms of taxes. So I would let that affect your calculus in terms of what game to play.
Right. And even if you are a U.S. citizen, you better get a good tax attorney, because that sounds pretty complicated as far as like they're going to figure out how much to take and how to get it back. So, wow.
Yeah, well, there is a line right there in the 1040 form of declare your gambling winnings, and what the IRS is kind of looking to see is they know all the jackpots that you hit, because the casino will send a copy of that form to the government. So the IRS, like, let's say that you hit $50,000 in jackpots in 2020, the IRS is going to know that, and they are going to want to see at least you declare at least $50,000. And you might get audited if they don't see that number. And furthermore, in theory, every gambling win you should pay taxes on. Now, do most people pay taxes on table game winnings and poker games and stuff like that? I'm not advising anyone to evade tax laws, but I don't think it's a coincidence that you see a lot of jackpots that paid $1,199 because there is no W-2G form necessitated with that.
Wow. Wow. Ooh.
So there is a somewhat short answer to a big question.
And now we're going to go take a shower because we talked about the IRS, so enough of that. Well, so now I'm curious, after all this, how do I win more or lose less on the slots?
Okay, very good question. Slot machines are just games of chance, no skill, but it does matter your choice of machine and choice of casino. And that is something that a good slot player should think a lot about. And also the reward program, your slot club, how generous are they with points and with comps. But that aside, as a rule of thumb, the fancier the casino, the tighter the slots, at least here in Las Vegas. Also, the further away you get from the Strip and downtown, the looser the slots. So those casinos out on the edge of town that cater to the locals have looser slot machines. So, number one, as I mentioned in a previous question, choose a simple game as opposed to a big fancy one that has like a branding around a TV show or a movie. And then choose a, how shall I put it, a casino that's not so fancy, and if you can, don't play on the Strip or downtown, play at one of the locals casinos. And I'd love to throw out certain names, but I don't want anyone getting angry at me. But yeah, that's my general advice. And also, furthermore, as I said earlier, slot machines are a real fast way to lose your money. I would call them the worst bet in the casino. So please play in moderation. Play at a low amount and don't play too long. Just get your fix in and leave.
Right, great advice.
Thanks, Angela.
So Mike, when I've heard people discussing their anecdotal things about slot machines, one of the things that I've heard mentioned a lot is the near miss effect. What is that?
Okay, this is another thing I could talk a long time about, but by law, okay, remember how when I was talking about megabucks, how I was talking about how the symbols could be weighted, and the actual megabucks jackpot symbol might have a low weighting, while the blanks above it and below it could have a high weighting. And that results in what's called a near miss effect. So you are going to get close to that jackpot symbol a lot, one position away, as opposed to hitting it exactly. But that they're allowed to do. What they can't do is have the reels, shall we say, the outcomes correlated to each other, where you deliberately get megabucks, megabucks, and then blank right below the megabucks. You can't do that. That is too egregious. So each reel must be independent, and the ratio of the highest weighted position can be no more than 6 times the lowest weighted position. So that still does create somewhat of a near miss effect, where you get close to that jackpot symbol a lot on single line 3 reel games. So there's not a simple answer to is the near miss effect allowed or not allowed. It's allowed, but only if done a certain way. And it does happen. You know, you hear a lot of stories like I was just, you know, one position away from the jackpot.
Yeah, you hear that all the time.
But that does happen a lot naturally. So so I don't know if that was the clearest answer, but the thinking is, the intent of the law is that the near miss effect is not allowed, but given that they are allowed these weighted reels, the slot machine makers can still kind of produce somewhat of a near miss effect, but they can't be too egregious about it. So that's a short answer to a difficult question.
Okay, I think it makes sense.
Thanks, Angela.
Now I have one last question for you, and this has to do with sending a little bit of love to anyone who works on the slot machines. What is the etiquette of tipping on a jackpot?
That is a very sensitive question.
Yes.
It's one everyone is going to have a different opinion about. I can only offer you mine. So my rule of thumb is you should tip 0.5% to 2% of the amount of the jackpot. The bigger the jackpot, the smaller the percentage. And you should also weigh into it any like service that you received. Did a host approach you? Did anyone offer you a comp? Was just like the drink service good? You know, you can factor that in to how much you tip, just like with a restaurant meal. And there is no like firm percentage like there is with, say, eating in a restaurant.
Right.
But it is, even though they say, if you ask an employee, they will have to say that a tip is not expected, but really it is. So it's kind of up to you, but I think a lot of people over tip, and I bet we are going to get comments about this video that my figures are way too low and stingy, but I know a lot of big video poker players, and that is their range if they tip at all. So, and think about it, you're really not getting a whole lot of human interaction when you play slots. So, and you aren't the one who asked to get that W2G form. You would prefer the machine just gave you a voucher. So you are getting a service that you really didn't ask for. So I would err on tipping on the low side. Nevertheless, it is kind of expected. So that's my answer, 0.5 to 2%. And I know tons of people are going to disagree with it, and tons of people are going to say, I tip absolutely nothing. You know.
And actually, that's what I'm curious about. So guys, after you watch this, leave it in the comments below. If you tip, what you tip, and who you tip. Are you tipping your server? Are you tipping the host? I'm very curious about this one because it is so different than, like, obviously I have strong feelings on whether or not you should tip a table games dealer or your poker dealer. But this one's a little different. So leave it in the comments below, guys, because I am very curious.
And read those comments. There's no set in stone etiquette about it. Yes.
So I'm really curious what people do and like what area you're in, what's expected.
But let me get a pet peeve off my chest. A grievance. When you play at some casinos, and it tends to be the smaller, maybe divier casinos, and you hit a jackpot, and it seems like employees come out of the woodwork and are hovering around when you get paid. This kind of annoys me. You know, I think you should only have to tip one person, and if they pool their tips, great. You know, that's not my business. But I don't think I should have to tip people that just congratulated me on the win who I never saw before. And what I like to say is I will give the person who actually paid me the money, I will give them a tip and say, split this as you deem appropriate. And they walk off with the money, and then there are a lot of grumbling employees standing around. But no, you know, I don't think that I need to tip you if you just say congratulations to me.
No, I agree with that one personally. I think that's a bit above.
Okay, so there's my pet peeve. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Well, and that brings us to the end of this. So. Great questions, Angela.
We kind of hit the jackpot on answering all of these.
Yes. So thanks for watching, audience. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, or better yet, subscribe to my channel. And please join Angela and I on lots of other gambling instructional videos.
We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye.